Hi, this is Allan Kozinn, co-author of The McCartney Legacy, and you're watching Tom and Andy on the Fantastic Two Legs podcast.
Well, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Two Legs. This is episode number 257. I'm one of your two co-hosts of Two Legs, Andy Nichols, and joining me today is the co-founder of Two Legs, Mr. Thomas Noughties. Good evening, Thomas. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Andy. It's great to be back doing another episode with you. It's been a couple weeks, but here we are.
We
We've got a great guest and
yes,
another
we do.
book and
Another
let's
book,
get to it.
and we haven't had an author on in quite a while. It's been a minute since we've had an author, and we're very proud and delighted to present Mr. Ian Derbyshire to the show. Good evening, Ian. How are you?
Yes. Good evening, everyone, and happy to be on the show.
Yeah, now Ian is the author of a recently published book called, there it is, Thomas, hold it up again, please, Macca in the Long, Noughties, Paul McCartney's Tracks, Lives, and Tours, 1998 through 2009. It is available now. The publisher is self-published or no? No,
It is actually IDD Publishing.
available from IDD Publishing. Very good. So this is a fascinating, another new book. And we're so happy that we have Ian here to tell us a little bit about it, his origins, why he did it, and why this specific period. Before we do that, any Macca news to go over, Tom, that we have to kind of go over? Nothing really breaking.
I guess he was hanging out in the pub one night singing or trying to sing or just hanging out.
Yeah, he jumped on stage there and did a kind of a half-ass version of "I Saw Her Standing There," but he was having a good time, wasn't he?
Yeah, it looked like he was. Hey, look, I mean, the man's, in his 80s now, celebrating life, and anytime that we see him, out and about is a good thing.
It is, and listen, he's having a good time. He's getting ready for a very busy fall with his tour kicking off again in October, so he's going to enjoy himself.
Hopefully a new album.
And hopefully a new album.
Yes, I'm going to actually see him in Sao Paulo. I'm going to see him in Sao Paulo in October. Yeah.
Are you going to go? You're going to go to one of those? Are you going to any of the UK gigs?
No, because I'm going to be in Brazil for 2 months, so it's an opportunity to see him now.
Have you ever seen him outside of the UK?
I've only seen him in London, really.
Okay.
No.
Awesome. Well, Ian, before we get into the book, tell us a little about yourself as an author, as a journalist, as a McCartney fan. What are your roots? When did you kind of fall in with Paul? First generation Wings fan, second generation. Where do you enter the picture with your McCartney fandom?
Yeah, I think I would call myself a first generation Wings fan. Really.
Wings fan, okay.
I mean, I actually grew up. See, my parents, they weren't actually into that type of music. My father liked sort of swing music and jazz, and my mother Frank Sinatra. But they did actually pick up Beatles singles because my father worked in Liverpool for 1 year and that. So listening to that, and but obviously I think the Beatles were always the top of my tree, and then from the Beatles, Paul McCartney, maybe George Harrison, well, all of them really, but Paul McCartney I followed throughout his career. Yeah.
Wow.
Can you talk a little bit about
Tom.
that time? In let's say, was it still kind of cool to be listening to those, like a George and a Paul, say like in the mid '70s over where you are?
Yeah, I think that obviously the problem was in the after the Beatles broke up and that there was an enormous number of other musical things, like obviously you had Led Zeppelin, prog music. I bought all the Yes and Genesis and that sort of thing. I really love the West Coast American music. So the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Eagles, the Beach Boys, and that sort of thing. And so, but England, I think the Beatles weren't actually the main thing on well, obviously when a new album came out, but there were so many other big artists, David Bowie and all those other people, that they had to compete a lot for space in the 1970s. And then we had obviously Bob Marley came in. He became surprisingly popular in the sort of the mid 70s, and you got sort of lorry drivers playing Bob Marley cassette, that sort of thing, and then we punk, and I think from there on we sort of bifurcated a bit from the United States music scene. Because all these sort of American groups like Kansas and all those sorts of things never really caught on in England. And that,
No, very geographically based bands, things like that. Kansas, that could not see them really taking off in England. But with, did you ever have an opportunity to see Wings live in the 70s?
No, I think the only I remember I did see one big the first concert I saw was actually big one in Blackbush, one of the biggest concerts ever, where you had Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, and Joan Armatrading, those sort of things. I think Paul McCartney, he wasn't really touring that much. I mean, when was he touring in the 70s? Toured in the early 70s, and he had quite a big
and then 79 as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was the world tour, which started in 75, but of course he had the year. He did have some dates with Wings over, obviously in England in 73, but you probably were too young, I'm guessing, back then to have seen him that early, right?
Yeah, I remember seeing it was a Bruce Springsteen. I saw Bruce Springsteen in London, and there were a couple of punk ones actually. the Jam, I saw the Jam, and
oh sure, Paul Weller and the Jam, yeah.
Susie and the Banshees. You probably don't know them, but they were.
I do.
X-Ray Specs actually. They were the ones. X-Ray Specs were with polystyrene on vocals.
So, being that it's we're recording this on the 26th of August, and we're actually in, I think, the throes of Beatle Week. Did you have a chance to go up to Beatle Week at all in Liverpool, or have you ever been?
I know. I think I was saying to Tom. I remember going to. One of my friends he was getting married, and he had his all his celebrations in Liverpool once, and we stayed in Menlove Avenue. Actually at the time I didn't realise it was such an important place, and we went to opposite the Cavern, some place opposite there, and what's the bar opposite the Cavern, and
the Grapes.
Probably, yeah. And that's
so they've got the Cavern Pub, the Cavern Club, and then the Grapes all on Matthew Street.
Yeah, somebody seemed to think I looked like George Harrison for some reason, but I couldn't really see the resemblance to any. But obviously, I've never been to Beatles Week itself. But, I've seen actually recently on another YouTube channel that Jeff Baker, he was there this weekend talking about his time. As Paul's publicist.
Yeah, and he's been in exile for the last 20 years. Wow.
That's a score. I think that's a score. I mean, I would very much welcome a Jeff Baker at one of the American Fests here or something.
Absolutely. He would be a good. I mean, he was more. I mean, you got to be really into Paul to really like. Like Jeff Baker. Yeah. I did see a photo online that Mark Lewison made an appearance at Beatle Week.
Right.
I don't know if you guys saw. He was there too. So. Coinciding with a nice end of the. Always Beatle Week is a crazy week, and hope everybody had a good time while they were there. Ian, on to the book proper. Why this period of Paul's history? And it's a very interesting one because there hasn't really been a book yet just on these years here. But really, just effectively, we'll call them the post-Linda years, really, which I agree with you in your writing that this is really a defining moment for Paul, pre-Linda and post-Linda. And you make that very explicit in the book when I've read it, like, the dividing line from 1998 on. And the book has a wonderful kind of chronology of it's not just about the music. The timeline in this book is tremendous because this is a book, folks, it's not just about the music. Ian has covered Paul's personal life here going on through without this traveling and obviously the marriage and divorce to Heather Mills. So this is not just a book about music. The music's in here, but you've chosen to chronicle Paul's life from 1998 on through 2009. Why those years?
Yeah. Well, obviously the 1970s Wings years, and that has been well covered in lots of various books. Now, obviously the Kozinn Sinclair one recently, but as you're saying, it was the interesting thing in terms of this period. Paul had the shocks of the death of Linda, having to adjust to that. In reality, it probably may have started with the Flaming Pie, really, because at that time Linda was sort of suffering from cancer, and that's sort of influencing his music a bit there. But then he goes through a sort of recovering from the death of Linda, and then he meets with Heather Mills, and he's in a big up when he's in love with her. Then he has a child when he's early 60s, has to adjust to that, and then things don't go well when in his marriage to Heather Mills, and then he finds a big divorce goes on, and then he finds new love again with Nancy Chevelle. So it's all these sort of ups and downs in his life, how they influenced his music, because you do find his music much more introspective, really, in this period, much more sort of personal, some of the lyrics and that, and his earlier albums.
True. And you get a sense here, very much like a Kozinn and Sinclair, and you've done the same thing here. Very hard to separate Paul's personal life and the music, and because so much of that goes on in his personal life, intertwines into the music, whether it's life events, marriage, a marriage, a divorce, especially the divorce. I mean, I like that you were able to kind of chronicle those events in his life, and also talk about the music, and just everything down to the detail of his television appearances. It's a very thorough look at basically a 20-year period, and which is now here 2009, which is 15 years old already now. Almost time for another book on 2010 to 2024, when maybe you can write that one. But
I think there's a lot of sort of, I think the word sort of serendipity in Paul's life. He meets up with somebody, which leads him down one particular street. For example, a lot of these is Peter Blake, the artist. He has links with him, and through links with him, he has links with Ian Dury, who he's never actually met before. But when Ian Dury's dying of cancer, he helps him out, and does a charity record later on for him, and then there's the Humphrey Ocean. There's a photograph. In some way, my personal view is that I think Memory Almost Full, I think, is one of his best albums, but the album cover is always put me off. And Paul actually said he was looking for an album cover which would attract the attention of people and that. And I don't know how he came up with that one. Really.
The
a
opposite
chair
may have happened. Yeah,
just a chair. Just a chair.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you. I mean, have you? Because we've been in such a rich period of Macca books over the last 20 years or so, prior to just a handful sprinkling here and there. Why do you think now so many authors have decided to write about McCartney? What is it, do you think? I mean, you think it's the music, the life, both? I mean, what is it that attracted you to write about McCartney and so many others lately?
Yeah, so obviously me personally, I mean, obviously it's always been the artists I follow most and that. Although, I mean, I was thinking also maybe another group I like is the Waterboys, really, because you heard of the Waterboys group, and it was almost sort of identical. Myself and the singer of the Waterboys almost followed life through at the same time. So that may be my next book on the Waterboys. But the McCartney, I mean, maybe a lot of people retired and they're sort of it's time to write these books and that sort of thing, really. But I mean, Paul is. There's one coming out, isn't it? It was Blaney on 1973, isn't it? When that's coming out.
Yeah. This book has very similar. Your work is very similar to John Blaney. I've noticed with your writings, very comparable and welcome additions to the library. Tom thinks it's 20 years. I don't think it goes back that. Blaney's books are about 20 years old, but I think it's more like the last 10. We've gotten really rich books just on Paul. It seems like it's, forever we took before we got
the Howard Sorn's book. We got the Peter.
They don't count. They don't count.
You know, okay, all right.
They don't count. Books that are just talking about Paul McCartney as a solo artist, right? The Ted Montgomery books, Luca Perasi, all those books, and now Ian and John Blaney, and now Ian's book that are just focused on a certain area of this McCartney as a solo career. It seemed like it's picked up some steam here, and I'm very happy that we actually have. We call this a recent McCartney, but here we're talking about music that's 20 years old, but it's recent, right? So all these albums like Memory Almost Full and Driving Rain and things like that. Ian, tell us a little bit about your process with your research. How long did it take you to write the book?
Yes, well, obviously, I mean, my background is in actually sort of I've got a doctorate in economic history, really. So I wrote a book. Used to did a thesis on Indian economic history. I think I've got the book here. Actually, it just was published in 2022. This one. This sort of took a sort of almost like a lifetime to put it together in that. But,
Can you hold it up? Can you hold it up again to the screen so we can see the full title? There we go.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, this is a 600-page tome, really detailed research in archives, a bit like Kozinn and Sinclair type one. But after finishing that, I was still in because I've also over the last sort of 20 years, because I wrote a lot of books on politics for schools really a long time ago, and then after that, I got commissioned by an encyclopedia to keep them up to date on what's happening in the world and that. But that's all came to an end really a couple of years ago, and so I had time to move on to what I thought was my passion really is music and that, and so I thought I'd start writing books on music, and obviously this theme was one which attracted me really in terms, because obviously you're not going to spend a lot of time writing anything if it doesn't interest you in the first place really. So sure. I want to find out myself what happened during this period.
Yeah. But one thing I did notice in this book is because with Blaney's book and with our friends, Chip. I don't know if you're familiar with this one, with 8 Arms to Hold You from Chip Manninger and Mark Easter. They tend to, when they're talking about the individual songs and albums, they tend to give their opinions on those, but you don't really seem to do that in this book here. You really kind of stay clear of really how you feel about the albums and the songs.
Yes, I mean that's yeah. I mean obviously the subtitle is the sort of 3 purposes of the book really. Is the first one is to cover all the tracks and songs Paul wrote and released during the period. So the background in terms of who was involved in them, what the song's about, and the lyrics and that. But I don't think people really want to know too much your personal views. I mean, I have got another book where it's completely personal views on Paul McCartney songs, and that didn't sell very well. So some other author, it was actually on sale for £5 or something like that. Some enormous piece of work really. So that was try not to be sort of put your own views forward. I mean, at times, I do say this is a strong song or anything.
Right.
But you try to leave yourself out of it a little bit as much best you can, right?
And the second purpose was the tours, really, because obviously we started touring again there, so give a bit of information on all the tours and the set lists and what were the reactions to the tours and how Paul went about during tours. It's quite interesting how he tends to sort of go around cycling around the town he visits or that sort of thing, and does a lot of other things. And the third one, obviously, you mentioned is what was going on in his personal life and his charitable activities and all that sort of thing going on.
So one of the things that you kind of sent us email, some of the questions that you've asked, I'm sure you've probably done some other appearances, is these albums between 98 and 2009. I mean, obviously you told us Memory Most Fools you think is the best one. Which ones do you think maybe were kind of duds or not nearly as good within this period?
Yeah, it's strange because I was listening to it recently, and I put sort of obviously Chaos and Crazy is a very good one again, but I was putting on yesterday and I wasn't so taken with some of the tracks, but then I'm putting on a different system today, and you can see the texture coming out of it. In terms of not very good, I mean, obviously the one I wouldn't really listen to is the Liverpool sound collage. That one is an experimental one, which maybe works in a gallery, but not for me. The classical ones, I mean, obviously I'm not really a classical buff in that. I mean, they're quite pleasant, really. The Ecce Cormeum is quite a pleasant one on that. But on the main albums, obviously Driving Rain gets bad press from a lot of people, but in reality it's because it was 67 minutes, and there's obviously if you chopped out 20 minutes or so of the songs, it would be a pretty strong album really, and I think there's some good tracks on that one.
Yeah, because if that was made with to be a 45-minute record and not one that was eight that long, people might have changed their opinion on that one. I think they would have had longer staying power.
Yeah, because he got 10 minutes on Rinse the Rain. Rinse the Rain
Yeah.
when he said he struggled to cut it down any less than that. I think.
Right. I like that part. The great thing is you chronicle every release, which I like because listen, I am a fan of the classical stuff. Some of the avant-garde stuff. I do enjoy Rushes for the most part. We all love Electric Arguments. Andy and I. But do you consider that all one big canon, or do you separate it from, let's say, his pop rock stuff? I mean, if it has his name on it, if it's Paul McCartney, Liverpool Oratorio, shouldn't that be in his main catalog, or do you separate all that stuff?
Yeah, well, I suppose it happened in the 1990s when he started branching out
Yeah.
into the
Yes.
classical field and that. And I mean, I just see it as part of his many talents. Really, he does a bit of painting as well and a
Right.
bit of poetry in that. So I would say his main canon is probably the Driving Rain, Chaos and Creation, Memory Almost
Right.
Fallen. Electric Arguments I'd include
You'd
in
include that
that.
in this period,
Yeah.
yeah.
In that,
Right.
I mean, I quite, yeah, I quite like Rushes, but it does sound at times a bit like sort of Mike Oldfield guitar and
Yeah, well,
keyboard
hey,
and that sort of
yeah,
thing.
there's nothing wrong with Mike Oldfield at all.
No. But
Uh, quick question, a collector question: do you have a copy of Rushes on vinyl? Said my co-host would like to know.
no, only on CD.
Oh,
The,
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
one,
That's what I. Yeah.
Twin
had to
Freaks,
ask. Had to
Twin
ask.
Freaks is another one which is difficult to get. But I did actually
Yeah.
recently come across like a bootleg copy where you get one CD with Twin Freaks plus other tracks, and a second
Yeah.
CD with a lot of other remixes now, which is a big Twin Freaks is actually quite a good piece of work as well.
I think so. I think so.
Worthy
I,
of a
I do have
re-release
that.
too, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
that I know you, Tom, got that as well. That's
Yeah.
worthy of. I think that could get re-released too commercially because a lot of people it's in demand and it's a good product, mashups and all that stuff. It really is, and that's all during this time period. Twin Freaks is what 2005, right?
Yeah, but
Right.
it's not really a McCartney album though, because it was really sort of he gave the material
Yeah,
to be remixed really. So he
Mm-hmm.
obviously approved the final thing, but he
sure.
put it on it.
But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all during this period because we think that, like as you mentioned, he's painting, he's doing poetry, he's not in recording, all between this 1998 2009 period. That Blackbird Singing is the book that comes out. The painting, and so that he's not just recording. We look at his recorded output and think, well, what's he been doing? Well, he's been doing plenty, obviously, between all the experimental stuff all throughout this period. And beyond, even before this and after this. So I like the question you've asked here. Considering David Kahn and Nigel Godrich as producers for Paul, who was the better fit? Who do you think he was?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Chaos and Creation was quite an achievement really in terms of it's quite a different sound to a lot of Paul McCartney ones. But actually, if you think about it, I mean, David Kahn, he went on to work with Paul's son James. He worked with
Yes.
Rusty Anderson and that, and he did a lot of work on the live ones really. And I think by the time he hit Memory Almost Fallen, once he decided you need to avoid 67-minute records and that, and because Memory Almost Fallen was only about 42 minutes and that. Listening to that again, it is very poppy, and at times I think I even heard some sort of like voice adjusting things in the background and that. So it's quite sort of different really from his other records. But it's incredibly strong album really. I mean, I think I would put it in his top 5 albums of Paul McCartney. Really.
Wow.
Wow,
Which
high
hey,
praise
no,
indeed.
yeah, no fault there. I think that I think both producers worked for him. Obviously, he felt more comfortable with Kahn, but Godrich pushed him, and that was a good thing. Because it's not always good to surround yourself with yes men. I mean, it's hard to say no to Paul McCartney, but look what Nigel pushed him, and a lot of McCartney fans consider Chaos and Creation one of his best albums ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think his son James was getting quite influential at the time because he was obviously on Driving Rain. He sort of involved in a couple of the songs and that, and
Right.
I think he was a fan of all this sort of Radiohead type music and that probably introduced Paul to Nigel Godrich, and I think that apparently they struggled over the was it Riding to Vanity Fair that
Yeah.
took a lot,
Yeah.
but the eventual what's produced out of it is actually one of his top songs of the decade.
I think it's one of his best songs this whole new millennium. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of Riding to Vanity Fair. I adore that song with a passion.
Yeah.
But
I think the other one is House of Wax. Really, is the one from
oh
Memory
well,
Almost
yeah,
Full.
House of
And
Wax.
Oh,
the
Yeah.
guitar solo and that.
Oh, the guitar solo is brilliant.
that's definitely that's up there with Writing Vanity Fair, House of Wax. Really strong songwriting, great playing,
Right.
good
End of the
lyrics. The end of the end, all that. I mean, I was fortunate enough to see him perform that song live in New York, which is rare. I mean, he did it at the Roundhouse and a few other places, but not too often. It's a shame that that album didn't get. I mean, he played a couple songs live from it, and Dance Tonight still kind of pops into the set list now.
Yeah, sure
But
does,
it's a shame that some of those songs, which a lot of people really speak highly of, did not have the staying power to stay into the set list much after those little pop-up gigs, for Memory Almost Full back in 2007, outside of Dance Tonight.
Yeah, I think that was another interesting thing about this period was the music industry was going through a transition really in terms of the you had all the illegal sort of downloads going on, and then the decline of
right.
CD sales, and this ended up with Paul moving to the Here Music label and releasing the
Yeah.
memory almost full. It got sort of
Yep.
with coffee and that
That's it.
coffee and that. So
Yep.
Yeah.
that was another sort of factor behind it all, because when it comes to the divorce settlement of Paul McCartney, they're saying he earns sort of 40 million pounds between 2002 to 2006, but I mean most of it was from tours and Beatles royalties, especially the number one album. He wasn't actually making money on his new releases.
No,
Right.
no,
Let's
because
get into.
go ahead, Tom.
I mean, I'm just gonna let's get into that a little bit because some person somebody we haven't really talked much about on this show after the 8 years we've been doing this is Heather Mills. I mean, so obviously Heather Mills is, when you look at his his long history, Heather Mills is only going to be like a really kind of like a little small blurb,
Footnote.
but yeah, a small footnote. So I mean, we've got little bits and pieces of her here during this time, but in the UK, I mean, she was getting destroyed, in I mean, in the tabloids, in the news articles, right? I mean, and to be honest with you, to be fair, I mean, I really love the fact that she did a lot of charity work. I mean, it's not like that she was a really bad person or anything like that.
No, I mean obviously before she met Paul, she was
Right.
she already had her own autobiography out. She was prominent in the charity field, and that's how he met her really at one of these events for charity and that. So she did a lot of that, and then obviously there could be something to do with her accent. She comes from the northeast of England, and it's not
Right.
really necessarily with some of the I mean obviously tabloid newspapers will go for people,
Right.
but I think while she was married to Paul, he got a bit of protection because they didn't want to embarrass Paul. But once the divorce started, then they started coming out with all these stories
Right.
against her, which were pretty unfair, really. And that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some things. I mean, look, I mean, people in bad situations do bad things. I mean, when she's a kid, she was separated from her family. Oh, and one great footnote that I like about this, what there's a great connection with Paul and Heather's mom, is that she ran off with a guy who was an actor in the Crossroads soap opera, which Paul had and Wings had recorded the theme song for. So I didn't know that. I thought that was a great little footnote in there.
Yeah,
But I mean, obviously, she does do a little thieving to eat, right? I mean, it's not like she had this perfect lifestyle or anything like that. So unfortunately, she had to resort some, naughty stuff, but it's not like she was a downright evil person.
No, I mean, she wasn't doing anything illegal on that, and she admits in her autobiography that when she was a child, because her family was a bit short of money and that, she might do a bit of shoplifting and that sort of thing.
Right.
But she's quite open about that, really. And then
Right.
when she married Paul and that, she was very active in promoting all this anti-landmines and then the
Yep.
Right.
veganism and that sort of thing. So, and since she's divorced Paul, she's become quite successful in the vegan industry and that. And
Does she have more of a bigger profile in the UK now? Because I mean, here in America, after the divorce, you don't hear boo about her in the States here.
no, I mean, you don't see much about her at all, really. I mean, I think she's.
You don't.
No, she's gone off the radar a bit, but not sure. Obviously,
Well, I mean, and there's a child that they're still raising here, which is
Yeah.
joint custody of with B.
Well,
So
well, I mean, we'll say. I mean, she's in her 20s. She's got to be in her early 20s. Beatrice. Now, are you surprised with how private they've been able to keep her life, Beatrice? I mean, because you've only, except for like a small handful of pictures, you just don't see her or hear from her at all.
yeah, I mean, I think the press do sort of respect Paul McCartney in terms of not running any bad stories against him because obviously he's an important figure and a lot of people love him in that. I think the difference with Beatrice is that whereas his children is before with Linda, they all went to state school. She went to a private school, which is quite different really in that. So that's probably another reason why you don't see very much of her because she's been sort of a bit cloistered there in a private school setting.
But I must say too, outside even in the '70s, Paul's kids were a little visible because he was touring the world, right? And the family traveled with him. So yeah, you saw the family and the kids, in concerts and traveling and music videos. But especially in the '80s too. I mean, I don't, and maybe Ian could speak to this. I don't recall seeing loads of press of the McCartney children anywhere really outside of the occasional concert film or something. But like the kids were always, I think, very well. The respect was given in privacy, and there was not loads of media hounding the McCartney children throughout the '80s either. I hardly recall seeing any photos of the kids anywhere.
No, it's really only since obviously she became an adult. Stella set up her own successful business, and she became a sort of star in her own right.
Right.
Meeting all these famous models and.
Right, and towards the end of Linda's life, going to Paris and for her supporting her at her fashion shows and things like that. But even James. I mean, James is a musician now, and they're all adults now. But when they were younger, you didn't really hear no higher hair of them. And even Heather, their oldest daughter, very very low profile.
No, because apparently James used to sort of work in sort of cafe as a waiter in Brighton and that, but you never really saw much about that sort of thing.
Yeah, but you've done a nice job of balance between the professional life, the personal life. I mean, the details on the divorce I had not seen any in a book before to this level. I mean, written with this much detail, which is really. I mean, were you able to pull all this stuff just from public record,
Yes. Well, unfortunately, the divorce settlement, what the judge said in that's all in public record, really. So
it is.
There's
okay.
all that detail and that sort of thing. There were a few also some things where they got leaked to newspapers and that, which some of the pre-divorce, where I think Heather made a lot of allegations against Paul, which he disputed in that. So that's in the papers, but it's not necessarily say it's reliable. I mean, the judge concluded that some of the things Heather said weren't reliable, whereas Paul was a reliable witness. It's interesting, actually.
And Jeff Baker, when Jeff Baker comes to his defense, saying that, with the Heather dispute, she's saying that there was an instance where he was violent with her. Jeff Baker comes to his assistance and pretty much saying, when the 15 years that I worked with him, I mean, I've never seen. Or I was here, or what was it? He was there the whole 4 years that they were together or whatnot, and he hadn't seen him act in violent in any way possible. So.
No,
but it's interesting that the lawyers they had were Paul had the one who represented Prince Charles when he divorced from Diana, and Heather had one who represented Diana. Although they broke up because she suddenly had a meltdown on television just before the hearing, when they said, "Well, we told you not to do that, and you have to represent yourself."
Mm. You mentioned this gentleman that Paul had a collaboration with, which I did not know about until I read in your book. Tell us about the Nitin Sawhney connection with Paul, because I loved that entry in the book and how they still have dinner and they're still friendly. Tell us a little bit about Nitin Sawhney and how Paul kind of came into his orbit, or vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, it's all sort of around about sort of 1998 when they were doing. After that, actually, Nitin Sawhney was already sort of won an award for one of his albums in the British music press and that, and so he was already sort of known in the London scene. And then when they were doing the rushes, he asked Nitin Sawhney to get involved in remixing some of the tracks for a release, and they sort of. He met him in his sort of bedsit in London and that, and they sort of bonded over some sort of shared. Because Nitin Sawhney was a sort of British Indian. He was born in England, but he's Indian heritage. And some of the quotes I think he used from, was it Tagore or something like that, had been used by Paul in some of his.
Oh, on Pipes of Peace, Rabindranath Tagore, yeah.
Yes, Pipes of Peace. So then they got to know each other, and then they obviously kept in touch, and he invited him over for dinner sometimes, his wedding, and then they actually collaborated on this album London Undersound by Nitin Sawhney, where Paul has a song called I think My Soul, which is actually quite a sort of reveals a lot about his relationship with Heather, really, and that is just about after the divorce and that, and
yeah. My Soul is, of all the work that he's done for other artists or lent his vocals for other artists, I would say that's probably my second favorite behind Best Love for his for the song he did with Steve Martin in his band. Great stuff. My Soul is excellent.
And yeah, it's just interesting to read. These are little details that are not really widely researched or talked about, right? Mainly because we're here in America. Us Yanks aren't really privy to everything that we hear about, or even some of these musicians like a Nitin Sawhney, he's not a household name in America, right? Really. So to find out that there's a collaboration and things that that really kind of deep dive stuff you bring to fruition here with the book, which is great because we're hardcore fans and we can still learn something new, but just from reading that, which I didn't know about until you sent us a copy of the book.
I mean, obviously there's people like David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. He had a long connection going back to the Pipers at the Gates of Peace sessions in the 1960s and that, and who collaborates on this Run Devil Run album and that.
Yeah, so let's start. Let's go back then with Linda's passing, and then he comes back after a year of mourning, and then we get Run Double Run. He goes back to his roots. Linda loved that music as well. Run Double Run is a fantastic, fun album. I like it a lot better than the Russian album. But I think it was recorded and mixed better than the Russian
Thank
album.
you, Chris Thomas.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the Run Double Run album as a return to music for the most part from Paul?
Yeah, I think a lot of people describe it as a sort of cathartic experience, really, from going back to 1958, 59, when he was a teenager, and tracks he liked, because some of the tracks are quite obscure, really, and some of the tracks that Linda liked and that, and they recorded it all in about 5 days, most of the album, and they sort of had a 15-minute run through because some of the people didn't know the songs, and then they went straight into it. But his vocals on it actually are amazing, really, in terms of some of his best rock vocals, and the tracks that he wrote, 3 tracks himself, which fit in perfect. Really, they could have been on early Beatles albums, really, in terms of the types of music.
He has the uncanny ability to take songs that we've never heard before and make them his own, like No Other Baby or Brown Eyed Handsome Man. I didn't know those songs before Run Double Run. I didn't know them at all.
Yeah, and then he's got Movie Mag, which was I'm trying to remember now. It was written by was it Carl Perkins, and I think he told him a story about that one, and that's quite an obscure song as well. But I think No Other Baby, was it No Other Baby? That's the slower track, but that's
It was a B-side. It was an old B-side. Yeah, I mean,
quite a standout track on the album. It was his.
Oh yeah, Blue Jean Bop is another standout for me too. I think he just does a fantastic job with that one.
So I recently set up something on the Hoffman forum, sort of asking people to rank the albums of this, and a lot of people actually do think Run Devil Run is one of his best albums of this period, really. So there's a lot of support for this album.
Yeah, I see the thread now. You've got Rushes, Run Devil Run, Driving Rain, Twin Freaks, Chaos, Rainbow's Full. Let's view the results here. It's on the Hoffman forums right now. You've got 92 people. 78% of the vote are saying Chaos and Creation in the Backyard is the number one. The number two being Memory Most Full, and then number three being Electric Arguments, and then tied for fourth is Run Devil Run and Driving Rain. Interesting. Only two votes for Twin Freaks and 8 votes for Rushes, Tom.
Oh well. One day
that's a good poll. That's a good. And we're going to post that. We're going to post a link to your post on the Hoffman forum. That'll be in the description box below if you want to see Ian's post on the Hoffman forums, which I look. Yeah, it's a great resource. Our former friend, or our current friend, our former co-host, David Gargolino, he's our pipeline of information on the Hoffman forums because he pulls the best bits out, you see, and tells us what it is because he has the time to scroll through it all. We don't.
I think of the subsequent albums, I think a lot of people like Egypt Station is one where a lot of people, they're probably the most favourite one.
Yeah, I really enjoy.
What's
But let's do the rundown real quick on the albums during this period. You got 98, you got Rushes. 99, you got Run Devil Run. 99, Working Classical. 2000, Liverpool Sound Collage. 2001, you got Driving Rain. 2005, you got Chaos and Creation and Twin Freaks. 2006, you got Secor Muum. Is that how you pronounce it? I'm not
Secor Muum.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Then you got in 2007, you got Memory Almost Full. And then Electric Arguments in 2008. I mean, that's 10 albums plus the touring, like you said, plus the painting and all the charity stuff. You know, a lot going on in
and a divorce, a marriage and a divorce,
divorce, and a new relationship,
and a child.
Yeah, a new child.
It's a lot.
But it's interesting how actually when Paul uses music as a bit of an escape, really, when he's in difficult periods and that, and especially some Electric Arguments, he was in the final stages of the divorce and that, and it was almost like go in the studio and just put his mind onto something else. And I think each day they, starting from scratch, they put together some rhythms and looked at some beat poetry they had and put together songs from that, really. So I think the creative process is quite a soothing one for Paul McCartney.
I think
it
is.
I think of that point in time when him going to the divorce and in the studio. I think of the cover of Tug of War with him just like the headphones on in the studio, just concentrating on music. And I think that was probably, a great way escape, like you said. And the great escape for him is just to have him with his headphones on and just being in the studio, making music.
It's what he does best. It's a cathartic process for Paul. Obviously, he's godly. He's got God-given talent to write melody, and he'll never stop. It's what he does best. It's his profession, but he's just himself. And throughout all these ups and downs during this period of your book, many highs and many ups and downs. But the music, whether it's up there or down there, like I said, you said you wouldn't listen to the Liverpool Sound College too much. I mean, I bought it just for that free now a little bit, but I mean, because we're collectors, but it's something that he does just because he wants to he's always moving on to the next thing, whether that's a painting or a writing or working on a book or working on a soundtrack or, I mean, one thing that we haven't touched upon is all the movies for songs he did during this period too. Right. They're talking about Vanilla Sky, right? He did that during this time period too.
Maybe.
Yeah. It's interesting that actually the Rushes was another one where he was actually did that just before they went off to Arizona for the final few weeks of Linda's life, and that was another sort of escape really into his own musical world with youth. Martin Glover is quite a good sort of sidekick for him to he does like a Brian Eno type role in terms of helping direct his musical experiments and that. So both those two occasions actually, Rushes and Electric Arguments, were at a time when he was feeling quite low really.
I think the Electric Arguments album is something that, as time moves on, might be the album people come back to. Say, God forbid, when after he's no longer with us, they're going to go back and go, "Wow, what a record that was!" Between 3 years, 2005 with Chaos, Memory Almost Full, and then a year after, this kind of quasi Fireman studio Paul McCartney album that we as collectors and fans love, but I think that one's really going to stand the test of time. Chaos gets the attention as it should. Memory Most Full does too, but during this period, I think Electric Arguments will be the one where people go back and say, "Wow, that's like they would have called that McCartney 3 before McCartney 3." I think the reputation will skyrocket with that album as time moves on. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean it's sort of divided into two halves. That album really. The first half is one with sort of lyrics and quite uplifting tunes. I mean, it's almost like his new relationship with Nancy is giving him positivity in that. The second half is a bit more like Rush's really, and sort of the experimental music. But I mean, altogether, it is quite is a piece which keeps your attention and is one of his strongest. It's definitely his strongest Fireman work, and as this poll shows, it's very well rated amongst his general albums.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's you mentioned Nancy. I mean, let's talk about her for a second. I mean, Paul has known her for years prior to them starting to date, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously because he used to live in had a place is it the Hamptons or something?
Yeah.
Right.
There, so they used to sort of come across each other, dinner parties, and she was a sort of breast cancer survivor. I think she did some breast cancer charity work there, and then whether her aunt or something relation is Barbara Walters, the television presenter. Obviously, she'll have come across Paul McCartney over her career, and it's almost like organised some sort of meeting. It's like a blind, whether it's a semi-blind date with her, and they hit it off because obviously Nancy. I suppose the problem with Heather Mills is she had a lot of energy and talents in that, but she wanted to be sort of centre stage a bit too much for Paul, maybe in terms of her activities, whereas Nancy is a better fit in terms of family orientated person and steady, level headed, and willing to stay more in the background.
Very true. I mean, we had that instance where Heather took over for Larry King one night. I think interviewing Paul Newman, which didn't go off.
Oh God, remember that?
Well. Yeah. And then they both Paul and Heather, they appeared on Larry King Live with Larry King.
Yeah, that was the whole bit with the seals. Remember that? They were in Canada, I think. They were doing some big protest about the seals.
That was right before their separation.
Right.
Yes, that was. I think because she had this big operation on her. She left her in a wheelchair for a couple of months and that. But I think in England, I don't know whether you saw it in America, we have the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire program.
Yes,
oh, that's right. They were on that too. Yes.
Yeah. So it's not the sort of thing you'd expect Paul McCartney to appear on, but
no.
He did with Heather and that, which was that's sort of. I mean, there was obviously a lot of things in the newspaper saying she was trying to sort of make him look a bit younger and change all his fashion and that, but that's all been denied in that. Right?
Well, I mean, let's go back to Paul circa 2002 with the. I mean, it's kind of obvious that he was trying to look a little bit younger than he was. I mean, this is a man who was going salt and peppery gray in 1986. If you watch the press video, so in 2002 listen, everybody goes through a phase. At the time, it is what it is.
She wasn't a fan of him smoking dope or any of that as well. So I think that led to a little bit of the rows as you speak of in the book as well.
You guys have read that little story that was reported about how he threw the ring out the window and it landed in the garden and stuff like that.
I think she threw it out.
She did.
Somebody threw it out, but then I think eventually they found it and shipped it back to the. I suppose the other thing is his wedding with Heather was quite different from his weddings with Linda and
Yes.
Nancy.
Oh, yes.
It was it was done privately, but it was like quite an extravaganza really in terms of the expense of it all and
It
I
was
was just kind of surprised because they've both been married already. Heather was already, married and already, called off a few engagements before marrying Paul. So to have this big lavish wedding for your second wedding seems kind of odd a little bit.
Yeah, it seems like I was just thinking about it yesterday that it's strange that they got married in Ireland really because it's
yeah.
not part of the UK, so I don't know how that ever affected
Interesting. But
their
that
marriage.
wedding was front cover of magazines all over America. It was on the front cover of People magazine and everywhere. It was it was private, but it was a very lavish affair and not something typical you would think Paul McCartney to do. More low key but hey, he was in the throes of love at the time and he did what he needed to do at the time and still recorded some great music and got touring. Hey, listen, if anything is remembered from that period, it was Driving Rain and the return to touring, really, in 2002, which is a big point for him because he's really been nonstop since then, give or take, obviously a COVID break. But which leads me to my next question here, yours actually, which was a great one. The staying power of his touring band and that he's used on albums. I mean, he's been with these guys for 23 years now, longer than the Beatles and Wings combined. It's kind of amazing when you think about it. Same band.
Yeah, because I actually saw the one hand clapping thing recently, and I think he said that he was looking for a band because he likes to be in a band, but he also likes to have the opportunity now and again to do his own projects and that sort of thing. And actually, this new band is perfect for that really, because he can go back to whenever he's touring. Sometimes use them when he's recording albums and that, but it's not something like Wings where there was a lot of sort of pressure in terms of they were a band and everyone was wanting to get their trying to get songs in and that sort of thing. So it's worked out very well for him really.
Yeah. I mean, he's added horns again to his live shows now. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but finally you've got some live horns. It's not just all on Wix to make those sounds out of his keyboard.
Yeah, I wonder whether Gabe Dixon regrets not joining the band in 2002. He was offered a spot in it.
Well, we had Gabe on several years ago. We had a chance to interview Gabe Dixon, and he doesn't regret it, Tom. If you recall, he was fine with the decision.
No. Right. No, he said he would have regretted it if he didn't take that chance and find out if he could make it on his own as a solo artist. But as we learned, Rusty and especially Brian's been releasing a lot of stuff while working with Paul, so I don't see why he wouldn't have been able to release material. But obviously, Gabe loves to tour. I mean, he's been out touring nonstop since we've had him on too. So
yeah,
who knows if he would have had that freedom, to go out and tour on his own, while working with Paul.
Yeah, but you get the impression that the Wix, he's the sort of cementing the whole band
right.
anyway.
Yes.
He sort of arranges it all and that, so he plays a crucial role in it.
Yeah, he's the musical director, and it all goes through Wix, which is great. I mean, because he said this. He's the link back to Linda. He's the only. So he carries the flame for her, which I think is great and pretty beautiful at the same time, because he was a member of both, touring bands there between the '89 and '93, and then Paul taking almost a 10-year break before he starts touring again. And but it's been nonstop, a flurry of activity for Paul since that time. I mean, I know we look at studio albums, but it's that period alone is why we're here, why we're celebrating it.
Yes, I think I'm due to see him again in October actually in Sao Paulo. So
how many times have you seen Paul live?
I've only seen him once before in 2010, long time. When he did the, so they call it London Calling, and in Hyde Park, because he did the year before, he did it with Neil Young was doing it, and Paul was watching in the wings, and he decided to come back the next year, because I've always been a bit sort of concerned about seeing him live because of the voice really in that. But I was, but that was even 20 years ago 15 years ago when I was concerned about that. But he put in a stellar performance there, and I think they couldn't get him off the stage. He did so many encores, and that they said he's got to pay a fine for the exceeding the time limit and that.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, as we have said this numerous times on the show, once the show starts, it doesn't matter. I mean, if he has a little flub here and there, you don't care. You're just so immersed in the show that it doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
Not one bit.
Normally, there's maybe one or two songs where he struggles in, especially the Long and Winding Road is a difficult one. But then he gets
I'm amazed.
Next one, yeah.
Well, that's great. You have a chance to see him, and you haven't seen him since 2010. It's quite a long time now, so I'm sure you're very excited to see him, and out of the country too.
Yeah, well, it's just that I was going to be in Brazil then, so it's an opportunity to see him. Actually, the tickets are a bit cheaper in Brazil. I'm not quite sure.
Really?
It's a 40,000 football stadium, so
well, it's huge. Yeah.
Don't see very much.
Yeah, maybe you'll get lucky and he'll play back in Brazil from Egypt Station.
Maybe he'll play from his new album if it's coming out.
Yeah,
well,
so
hopefully something. Yeah.
We've been talking about the albums and the work during this period of '98 to '09. Ian, tell us some of your favorite things from McCartney post this period. Say from 2010 on. What have been some of your favorite albums and things and highlights, lowlights, say from this point on in your book to the present day?
Yes, I mean obviously you had Kisses on the bottom. Is not really a particular favourite. I don't really go in for these artists doing Rod Stewart doing his classic standards and that. New is a strange one really because when I hear it I like it, but then it doesn't really stick in. The songs don't stick in my head so much really. So that's one. Whereas Egypt Station is one that that's probably 80% of the songs on Egypt Station I like, and McCartney 3 was a good surprise because he's back experimenting and deep feeling, that type of thing is quite a good one. So I mean the new is one I try to get into it, but I struggle all the time with that one.
It's a big polarizing album because people either kind of go off that album or they think it's the bee's knees. I know Owen Ling, friend of the show and a fellow journalist and author, he thinks New is, I think, one of the best albums McCartney's ever done. And so it's very polarizing record for a lot of people with New. Interesting.
Yeah, well, I think he used 2 or 3 different producers on that, so maybe there's a bit of inconsistency amongst the tracks.
But no, it's been fantastic. Go ahead, Tom.
I was going to say I really appreciate you giving us a shout out there at the end of the book. Mentioning us. So we really thank you for that, and other friends of ours who you've mentioned about their YouTube channels or podcasts or video casts. So thank you very much for mentioning us in the book. And and it is available now, right, on Amazon or wherever you can get your books, right, Ian?
I think it's on Amazon and also distributed via bookshops via another channel, another channel. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Ian Derbyshire, thank you so much for coming on to the show today and giving us a copy of the book here. We'll sit on our shelves very nicely.
If you order the book on Amazon, it won't have the strip.
No, we have the Obi strip. We have the Obi strip courtesy of Ian, and we're very thankful. And you've got some color photos in it too, folks. So which is a good job.
I really appreciate the timeline that you present in this book. I thought it was very well done. I love the research that you put into the book. I really enjoyed it, and I'm not done reading it. I'm still reading it, so I'm really enjoying it. I'm finding this, to be honest with you, the whole Heather period I didn't really pay much attention to, so I'm loving it because I'm learning about that stuff. And more of his personal life during those years.
Yeah.
So
Joe, I must say a thanks to the Dutch sort of McCartney fan club who produced the magazine.
Oh yes.
There's one of the people, David Borman. He actually allowed us to reproduce some of it. He went to a lot of the 2009 tours, so some of the photos are actually taken by David Borman.
I see. A lot of these are credited to David Borman. I see that. Yeah. Some of these great live shots here from the period. Yeah. So,
yeah. I think actually on the touring, probably the other thing is his set lists haven't really changed too much since since then, really. You still see the same backdrops and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the backdrops are the same. The big rising platform in the middle of the gig and stuff like that. But we'll see. So you're going to go see him in Brazil. We'd love to have you back on and give us a little review of the concert, your first one. So let us know after the show if you'd like to come back on and give us a little on the spot review.
Yes, I'll see if I can take a few short videos of the show.
That'd be great.
That'd be great. Thomas, what's cooking in your neck of the world right now?
Well, my other show, Talk More Talk, we'll be back. We haven't decided what we're going to do next for our next show, but we'll get there and we'll be back. We will be back soon. Obviously, we posted the Rack Our Brains episode we did at the Chicago Fest. So go over to Talk More Talk and subscribe and check out our latest video.
Excellent. Ian, any other thing you'd like to plug before we say goodbye?
No. Obviously, thanks for this. Thanks for hearing
the book. Yeah, link will be below on Amazon, US and UK. We'll put both links for both the UK store and a US store. And if you're a Hoffman Forum reader, go check out the post that Ian posted there and vote on what your favorite album in this period here between 1998 and 2009. And let's see those votes trickle up and see where people go.
Yeah, actually, you can visit iddpublishing.com because I have a bit of a website related to this where I do a few blogs on Paul McCartney there. So that's another thing to look out for now.
That link will also be there too.
The photo on the back of the book.
Classic.
Classic.
Yeah.
There's Ian recreating Paul's Live, right, from 1993, and it's a good photo of that. When did you take that photo? When was that from?
Yeah, unfortunately, the dog has passed away a couple of years last year, so it's about 5 years ago. 5-6 years ago.
But fantastic book. It's called Macca in the Long Noughties. Paul McCartney Tracks, Life and Tours, 1998 through 2009. Ian, thank you so much for being on the show today, and we wish you much success and luck with the book moving forward.
Thank you very much.
Well, that was a lot of fun.
That was great. Thank you, Ian, once again. Like I told, I'm honestly really enjoying the book. I think it's the timeline's fantastic. You don't really see that a lot the way it's written. Again, you've got all the releases in here, the stuff he did with other artists. All that stuff's in the book. As we talked about, with the Heather and the Nancy and Linda's death. We got into a lot of that too. So really enjoying, and I think everybody out there will enjoy the book as well.
It was much more of a deeper dive into Paul's personal life than I thought the book was going to be. I thought it was just going to be about the music, and it was much more biographical in spots with Paul's life during this time, and that was a welcome surprise. I was expecting like a John Blaney book just about the music, and it was different. Right. And I don't know if this was. I mean, he did show us that he was an author, and he did not. But I think this is his first book on Paul. So it's and I love the timeline. The timeline, as you pointed out, Tom, was great.
Yeah,
like you got key events, right? Like here you go.
Yeah.
Boom.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, the timeline's everything.
Yeah. Key events, the dates, just good stuff.
Right. And that's the kind of thing we try to do with our year-end episode is like all those events that happen, and just like it has in the book, year by year, you know exactly what he's doing publicly, obviously, whether he's releasing or if he's doing a charity concert or he's recording.
Yeah, all those one-off appearances or like things like that, or Paul appear, like all the details about like Paul appearing on a webcast to promote Wide Prairie, like things like that you forget about, these little, or how about Paul's first public appearance after Linda's death? These are details that you kind of get lost in the midst of time.
Absolutely. Yeah,
but Ian did his work, man. He did his research and his homework, and it's all here. And it's a concise book. It's 218 pages. So he credits us in the credits, which is great. All his primary resources are in here. For all the authors, he credits Blaney, Denoyer, obviously Kozinn, Magazine, Paul's own books. I'm trying to think of some of these other books. He's got Luca in here credited as well too. The Sounds book, obviously, which we talked about, but that's more of just a general biography. But no, it was good. It was a good issue and a good book to look at. Interesting. Again, I was just fascinated with the timeline he chose. He chose from 98 to 09. He could have went to 2010. He chose to stop at 09, which was interesting.
Well, I think with the emergence of Nancy, I think that's probably a good place to stop. You know, you lost love, you got it, you lost it again, and then now you found
Yeah.
it.
I mean, it's got a nice section in here on the postscript.
Right.
Postscript, 2010 and beyond. So, Ocean's Kingdom, Kisses, New,
Right.
Pure McCartney. So he kind of goes over even all. I mean, this has got one hand clapping in here. So this is obviously a very modern book with one hand clapping. Just came out in June, so it's all in here. So yeah, I'm not sure how much it is on Amazon. It's probably pretty cheap. What is it? Maybe $20. Maybe.
I'll have to check it out because will try to buy a copy because obviously I want to help support.
Yes,
Ian as
we
well.
like to do that.
And and also you mentioned Blaney. I don't think we've mentioned this. We mentioned this on our separate live streams, but
Yes.
we should mention it on the show that our friend John Blaney is going to have a new book out later this year called 1973. The last year the Beatles were fab. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but like I said, I have to read and find out why he, may suggest that was the last year they were fab. Again,
Well, as I recall, you Talk More Talkers did a panel on 1973 in the 2023 fests in New York.
We didn't really suggest that that was the last year they were fab. We were just more or less celebrating that year. It was
but I
50th
think
anniversary.
Blaney's kind of getting at the same point too. I mean, it was like all those iconic releases all throughout that year,
Right.
and
Well,
I think
we'll see again. Yeah,
that'll be a great book. And thank you, John.
Yes.
I think we'll have it within a week or two. I think he said so. That'll be a future show next month as well too.
Absolutely.
In September.
Obviously, Mark and Chip are hounding at us to get them back on the show.
Are they?
So, yeah, they want to come back on. So
okay,
we'll figure something out with them, and obviously our part 3 with the Paul and George.
I feel like we're taking forever to get that done, but we'll.
I know. The research is coming slowly, and there's so much, in those mid 80s when you get George out there talking again, he really has a lot to say about his ex-bandmate.
Certainly does, and not too kind either.
Not always, no.
Not always, but so that'll do it. And all right, partner, see you next time.
Yeah. You got us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out there. Email us at twolegspodcast.com if you got any comments or suggestions. Like our buddy Kyle Hand always will give us an email and say, hey, how about something like this? And we'll say, hey, why not?
Why not? Sure. Like Frank Pantangeli too. So, yeah, Godfather do this and Godfather do that. So I said, yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
I love that scene.
For ideas.
Oh, please send us an email. Drop us a line. So,
Drop us a line.
Have a good weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Listening to Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast, hosted by Tom Hunyadi and Andy Nichols, with musical contributions by Dylan